how many of us as children remember going out into the yard and picking beautiful flowers for our parents? Those small, beautiful yellow flowers that were in such abundance all over the front lawn. They even had a glorious name: dandelions. Dandelions? Anytime someone was feeling down, a bouquet was only a few steps away. I seemed to be able to brighten someone's day all summer long, until one day I presented a bouquet of dandelions to my grandmother, and she asked me not to bring those weeds into the house. Weeds? These beautiful flowers? Weeds? At some point, after learning what dandelions were, my grandmother asked my cousin Sarah and I to pick the weeds in the front garden as our chore for the day. I asked my grandmother if she was sure she wanted us to pick all of the weeds, and she said yes, all the weeds. After a while, Grandma came out to check our progress, and there we were, systematically pulling up every flower in her garden, one by one, each with a fate landing in a pile on the driveway. Clearly, as children, it was hard for us to discern what was a weed and what was a flower. As we grow, at some point, we all learn that dandelions are in fact weeds, but we do not become experts in identifying all of the weeds in our lives. In Palestine, both during Jesus' time and presently, there is a weed called the bearded darnel. The bearded darnel is a very sneaky weed, and it looks exactly like wheat, and in fact needs to grow alongside wheat in order to thrive. It's often called cheating wheat. This may have been the reference point for Jesus while sharing this parable in our gospel today. The bearded darnel intertwines its roots with the roots of the wheat, so that if you attempt to pick it, you will inadvertently pick up your wheat as well. Even the most trained eyes cannot tell the bearded darnel apart from wheat until they both begin to bloom. When the wheat blooms, it blooms healthy, abundant fruit, and it makes the stalk bend a little bit, almost as an act of humility under the weight of its fruit. When the bearded darnel blooms, it continues to stand straight up, offering its toxic fruit to anyone who might be naive enough to pick it. You see, the bearded darnel causes symptoms in humans very similar to alcohol intoxication and can be fatal to many. For those around the world where cheat or bearded darnel is located, it's important for farmers to have two qualities. First, they must be patient. If they attempt to hunt down the bearded darnel too soon, they may sacrifice the quality and quantity of their wheat. But if they are patient and give the wheat every opportunity to grow, thrive, and show itself, they are likely to reap a rich and bountiful harvest. Second, farmers must be discerning, especially when it comes time for harvest. They cannot lazily accept the dangerous fruit that might be the easiest to spot standing straight up in the field, but rather they must do the work to harvest the humble, life-giving fruit. Our gospel passage today can be a challenge to hear. No one really wants to think about a time in which we might experience the weeping and gnashing of teeth. But there is much hope in this passage. This parable suggests that God is giving us two great gifts in this life. First, Jesus is clear that he relieves us from the duty of identifying the weeds around us. It is not necessary for us to be the judge of those around us. We leave that to God. This is a blessing in disguise. I'm not sure about you, but I am an A-class judger. I am great at sitting on my high horse and pointing all the cheat and all the weediness going on around me. And Jesus makes it clear that it is not our job to judge the fruit of those around us. In the end, true judgment comes from God and God alone. The other gift that Jesus gives to us in this parable is the gift of time. Jesus describes a very patient and loving master who believes in the good of the seed that was sown originally. Thankfully, this master is patient and not only judges its seed by its fruit, but does so at the very end, giving it all the time it can. The reality is that we are not all wheat, and we are not all weed at any given time. The root of both plants are deeply entangled in our hearts. There are likely days in which we are abundant with rich, healthy fruit that nurtures and feeds the world. And there are other days where we are proudly sharing toxic fruit that not only harms us, but harms those around us. Over the past month, a group of 20 or so members of the St. James Cathedral community participated in our Creating Courageous Conversations, a study in anti-racism together. One of the most powerful sessions we did together was explore what it means to be racist or anti-racist. Ibram X. Kendi, professor at Boston University and director of the newly established BU Center for Anti-Racist Research, defines racist as one who is supporting a racist policy through their actions or inaction, or expressing a racist idea. Adversely, he identifies an anti-racist as one who is supporting an anti-racist policy through their actions or expressing an anti-racist idea. For Kendi, a person is not a racist. Rather, a person may exhibit racist behaviors or ideas. He outlines that on any given day, most of us likely express both racist and anti-racist behaviors and ideas. In his recent book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, Kendi says, racist and anti-racist are like peelable name tags that are placed and replaced on what someone is doing or not doing, supporting or expressing in each moment. These are not permanent tattoos. No one becomes a racist or an anti-racist. We can only strive to be one or the other. We can unknowingly strive to be a racist. We can knowingly strive to be anti-racist. Like fighting an addiction, being an anti-racist requires persistent self-awareness, constant self-criticism, and regular self-examination. Our small group discussions shed light that many of us identified strongly with this concept. Much like the title of a song in Avenue Q, Everyone's a Little Bit Racist, we recognize that we have all had the experience of displaying racist behaviors, bearing toxic fruit from the root of our weeds, but also displaying anti-racist behaviors, bearing life-giving fruit from the root of our wheat. The work of anti-racism is hard and long, and so is living as a follower of Jesus, a life that is firmly rooted within the stalks of our wheat. Thankfully, we're not called to bear this type of fruit alone. Not only do we have a very patient and loving God, we also have an amazing community of believers, lovers, stumblers, both weedy and wheaty folks here at St. James. While there are about 50 of us sitting together in this cathedral this morning, many more of us are worshiping from home. We know that the true heart of the church is not this building, but it's the group of people that call this building home. It is a group of people who are striving to be their best selves together, who are trying to discern the weeds within ourselves, and who are trying to bear fruit that feeds the world in which we live. So whether you are at home joining us online, or if you're sitting in an unfamiliar pew because you didn't get to pick it, with a mask on, I am so grateful that we're gathering together as a community, following Jesus. And may we always be a humble group of people who can still smile when we're handed a stunning bouquet of dandelions, even if they're weeds. Amen.